I got started pretty much like most other scorekeepers or young timekeepers in Northern Ontario and across Canada. So I was, I think, 13 or 14 years old. And well, I guess maybe a little bit different because I got involved doing the statistics, individual stats for Sudbury minor hockey right about the same time through a friend by the name of Gary Hall, actually father of a friend. And in doing the stats, of course, I was getting all the score sheets back. We're talking back in the early 1980s, so everything was still very much paper based. And in looking at the score sheets, at some point, it kind of crossed my mind. Well, okay, this somebody obviously is at the rink filling these out, and so I remember approaching Gary and saying, "Okay, how do I go about getting a job doing that?" And he pointed me in the direction of Jerry McCrory at the time, who was looking after the timekeepers. And the next thing you know, within a couple of weeks, I was up. And we didn't have very much in the way of formal training. So I think I remember my second or third game was like a midget AA game. It might have been called differently at the time. And we had a delayed penalty situation where three penalties running, and I let a guy out of the box too early, and doesn't he go and score? And it's funny, years and years later, the episode kind of stuck with me because I remember going back into the referee's room after the game and saying, okay, I am not leaving here until you guys explain to me how to work that situation, because I do not want to be yelled at that like that again, right? And so, yeah, early on, I think the only thing that really set me apart as far as a scorekeeper very early was that I had this like burning desire to know every rule, the ones that pertain to the penalty box. So not all the stuff the referees have to know, but anything with regards to who gets out, what penalties get served, how do you know what goes up on the board, all of those sort of things. And I was also very fortunate to be blessed with very, very good handwriting, as long as I took my time doing it. So my score sheets, very quickly, I found people coming back and going, oh my God, we love your score sheets. We can actually read this. And of course, then, it becomes kind of a snowball effect, right? The more you heap praise on a 14 or 15-year-old, the more I kept wanting to do it better and better and better. So so by the time I was 18, I was, lo and behold, I'm doing Wolves games. I think first and foremost, you have to have a certain attention to detail. You want to be driven by accuracy. I think that's what makes a good, whether it's a stats person or a timekeeper, scorekeeper. You don't want to be missing that second off the clock, or slow starting the clock, or missing an assist, or having the wrong player on a score sheet. It's funny, like I'll be doing a house league game, and I'll call the ref over and I'll say, okay, you got to talk to that team over there. They've got a number 18. They don't have an 18 on their lineup sheet. And the guy will look at me and say, like, how did you even notice that? And I said, well, because I'm watching the game. 18 just made a couple of nice plays, and I looked down to see who it was, and there isn't a name beside it. And then, somebody will come back and say, oh, by the way, 18, yeah, he's wearing, his sweater he forgot a sweater at home, so he's using the extra one we have, right? And they never changed it on this. So that kind of thing. And it's funny because that basic skill is very much still at the forefront of what got me these opportunities. I mean, it really is as simple as that core attention to detail. It plays out differently. I mean, how it's represented at the Olympics is fundamentally different than if I'm doing an Atom House League score sheet, right? Or now that even the tablets. And it's funny because people have said, boy, it must drive you crazy, given that you took so much pride in your score sheets looking so good, to now be moving to tablets where the score, the writing doesn't matter. And I said, no, because it's still that same desire to have the perfect score sheet still drives you on a tablet. It still bothers me if they make a goalie change and you're not recording it on the tablet. So I think first and foremost, above all else, that makes a really good scorekeeper. It would also make a good statistician, generally speaking. As much as I can sit here and take a great deal of pride in knowing that there's a ton of referees and a ton of coaches and a ton of managers locally who are aware of my work and respect my work, there's no way that level of involvement would ever open the door to something like the Olympics. God bless all these people, but that's just not the circles they run in. I really owe it, to an extent, I could say I owe it all to Dan McCourt, because the whole sequence starts with Dan. So yes, I think I took advantage of that door opening, and I did some things really well, and that opens the door to future opportunities. But the whole cycle doesn't begin if not for Dan McCord, and you certainly Dan, former NHL linesman, retired from the NHL, and then got hired on by the league to work with junior officials right across the country. Well, and I've told this story many times over, Dan is out in Vancouver in the fall of 2008, taking in a game. He's working with officials, right? He's sitting up in the press box. And by pure luck and chance, the lady next to him is a lady by the name of Barbara Byrne, who was the hockey venue operator. She was in charge of all of the hockey for the Vancouver games. She has a business card out in front of her that has the Olympic rings. Well, Danny is nothing if not a very talkative and outgoing person, right? There is no way Danny's not striking up a conversation with somebody next to him. They get talking about a bunch of different things, his involvement with officials, blah, blah, blah. And during the course of the conversation, she says, it's interesting. One of the areas we're really struggling to find qualified people is off-ice officials. Danny said, geez, that's strange. He says, I've got a couple of guys in Sudbury that are really good at it. So myself and Todd Guthrie that do the Wolves games. And she says, well, yes, but you're in Ontario and you do have to understand that they're volunteers, meaning they have to find their way out here. So they're paying their own expense to get out. They have to find accommodations. And while we do feed them while they're working, anytime they're not working, they're on their own, right? So it's the Olympics. It would be a wonderful opportunity, but you're probably going to be out of pocket. Now, I will caveat that by saying that the minor hockey associations in Sudbury caught wind of that about 2 months before we were leaving, and God bless them, they stepped up and covered all of the airfare for Todd and I and gave us some spending money. So they all got together, they all made donations, and they brought us out to this night. We thought they were just there to kind of, wish us good luck, right, and talk about the opportunity. And lo and behold, we get these incredible checks. And boy, it speaks volumes to hockey people in the North, I think. That's probably the question I've been given the most thought to in the past few weeks, because obviously, since being back, I'm talking to a lot of people, and they all want to know what it was like, and that's probably the most common one. And I think the simplest way of saying it, if I can try to make this as short as I can, which is generally not very short at all when I'm storytelling, Vancouver and Korea were singular overriding takeaways from the game, from those events. So in Vancouver, it was, I would say the excitement of doing your first ever. So it's all new, right, of doing the Olympics and being named to the gold medal game. That one will, and then the way the gold medal game played out, obviously, the Americans tied up in the last minute, the Crosby golden goal, all of that. To beat out guys that are NHL regular scorekeepers for that assignment, I mean, I still get shivers thinking about it. Like that, to me, you could not have given me a bigger compliment in the world than to say, we actually think you do a better job than these guys that do it full, well, not full time, but they do NHL hockey regularly. So that was Vancouver. Never thought leaving Vancouver that I would ever do another set of Olympics. Was hoping I might get a chance to do a couple of other international events. And I did. I worked the World Juniors in Toronto a couple of times with a completely different crew, which was kind of interesting. Korea, the highlight was absolutely being the guest of the IHF. For them to come to you, to think that they're sitting in a room in Zurich and they're saying, guys, we just ran the test event and I'm a little worried what's going to happen at the Olympics because we have a lot of really bright, young, well-intentioned Korean kids who haven't seen a ton of hockey. And if we get any kind of a goofy situation, and all it would take is something like a 4 and a 2 on the same play that they haven't seen it very often, right? We're going to be in trouble. We're going to look awfully stupid when the game gets held up for 5 minutes because the referee's trying to explain to the timekeeper what they've got to put up on the scoreboard. So to go over, to then have your name come up in that conversation and then say, okay, here's the guy we want. We want him here for this event. That was unbelievable. And they treat you, I mean, I couldn't say enough good things about the IHF. And then this time around, it was BOCOG, the Beijing's organizing committee that actually, we were their guest on this one. So in Korea, definitely It's the, you know, you're there as a guest and not a volunteer anymore, right? You're still a quasi volunteer, but at least somebody else is footing the bill for your accommodations and your airfare and something like that. In China, I think that what jumped out is because of COVID, it took on much more of a hockey tournament feel for me. And which was fine because I was very much in my element, and it is the Olympics. So I was doing more games in China than I did at either of the other two events. I did a ton of men's hockey. I did the gold medal men's game, the bronze medal, both semifinals. All of the games that were in National Indoor Stadium were games that I did. And so I immersed myself in the hockey. Now, in that sense, you say, okay, well, is that different than when you're running, you know, doing the big nickel tournament? Well, only to the extent that those were the moments that you kind of noticed that were special, right? You kind of, like in the big nickel tournament, I don't have this incredible light show going on 6 minutes before game time where they're doing all sorts of stuff all over the ice. We don't have the opportunity to go to opening ceremonies of an Olympics team when you're doing the big nickel tournament, right? So all of those things. And then the hockey end, I was so proud of the job that, and I'll say my team, because in the penalty, that was stressed to me that you are looking after this entire group. And we're at an OHL game, there's 3 of us in the penalty box. Our group there is about a dozen people across the floor. Like that goes all the way across to the penalty box attendants. So it includes the broadcast, Olympic broadcast services person, Amy, who was next to me, who was just an absolute treat to work with. It includes my data entry person, who was a young 19-year-old student from Denmark, who is, again, I'm just adore him. He was so good. And really, us working together and really clicking made the event extra special. My timekeeper, who was from Calgary. I mean, all of these people kind of working, and then the Chinese people, right? I mean, we had Chinese penalty box attendants that were so keen to learn about something and you know, for anybody who's been around hockey, they will appreciate this. The idea that if a player drops their stick on the ice, if play starts moving up ice, it's not unusual for the back official to grab the stick, and he's looking for that penalty box attendant to open the door so I can get the stick off the ice, right? Well, for the Chinese, they haven't done enough hockey to think that, okay, why is this guy bringing me the stick while the play is going on, right? But they wanted to learn, and they were so good, and they were so excited. I mean, we had them rattling the door when players were coming out of the box, and you could see them just getting all excited about it, right? And we're going, yeah, it's what we do back home to kind of notify the linesmen that, hey, by the way, be aware, somebody's going to be coming out of this box in a second. I need your attention, right? So those sort of things, all of that end that I would kind of include as hockey stuff. You can probably just hear it in my voice. It's what got me so excited about the event there. Take pride in what you do. I really do believe that. Like, it's just, I would so love to open the door for other kids. I can't promise people that I can get them to the Olympics. Do I have enough contacts to hopefully open up some doors within Hockey Canada? Absolutely. A girl by Lisa Connor, whose grandfather, Art, was a longtime, and he was a chairman of Silver Stick Hockey for years and years, a former OHL referee. Well, Lisa ended up doing the World Juniors with me one time and actually time kept the gold medal game in Toronto. I was on the door in the penalty box, and it was such a thrill to see her doing it. And look, at no point would I sit here and say I can take credit for Lisa. She's an exceptionally good timekeeper, and she deserved to be there and get that opportunity. Do I think it helped to have me, having already done one set of World Juniors, kind of putting the name out there? Absolutely. I don't think it hurt her. But those are like, I get such a thrill of getting a chance to bring a 16 or 17-year-old into the Wolves games, right? And have them do, because I can see how excited they are. And all I'm really looking for, Lindsay, I mean, yes, it helps if you have an ability to kind of bounce numbers around quickly, that's going to help. There's no doubt about it. The math skills are part of it, but you don't have to be, I certainly don't consider myself any kind of mathematical genius. I've got a couple younger brothers that are way miles ahead of me as far as that sort of stuff goes. But I think that really it's just like, take care in what you're doing, want to do a good job. Look at I used to tell people I would look at a blank score sheet as a chance to make the perfect score sheet. I always started off a game and it bothered me when I go, oh, you idiot, you just put the penalty on the wrong side of the sheet. Well, it's going to happen a couple of times a year because usually it's when the players are on the opposite side, right? So your sheet is set up one way. The guy who's sitting to me on the left is actually going to be put on the right-hand side of the sheet, right? It's a common mistake when we were doing paper-based sheets, but it would bother me. When you make a mistake, it should bother you a little bit because then you want to learn and you want to get better and you want to do your best. And at no point people kind of tease me about when I do make a mistake, and I said, hold on, guys, I don't think I ever professed to being perfect. I strive for perfection, and I absolutely take a ton of pride in that. But I'm human. Yes, there's going to be times where I looked at the number and I thought it said 71, and the guy comes over and says it's actually 77, and I say, okay, well, I can see where I would have missed that. But again, okay, now I'm keeping an eye on him. How can I tell that's 77? That's interesting. He's the only guy on the team wearing white laces on his skates. Okay, there we go. Now I've got him. Every time from now on, I've got him. Right? So those sort of things.